Nobody's special and everybody learns a language the same way. I learned how to speak Spanish the same way I learned how to speak English, which was the same way you learned how to speak your native language. All of us can do it. Nobody's special. But in this video, I'm gonna go over the soft skills that I think are what actually separates people who end up successfully learning a second language with those people who don't. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna reveal what I think is the most important soft skill that not a lot of people talk about, but I think is very important. Before that, the first skill that in my opinion is such a good predictor of whether or not someone's gonna succeed or fail in language learning is their sociability. It could be more of a personality trait, this specific skill, but basically your extroversion, your sociability, how comfortable are you striking up a conversation with a stranger in public? Being comfortable, being sociable in public is just such an advantage when it comes to language learning. And the obvious reason you might be thinking is, well, you're more likely to speak your target language, so therefore it's easier for you to, learn to speak the language. I think it goes even deeper than that though. Language learning is such an inherently social hobby. Most of the time you're learning a language so that you can communicate in that language. So not only will you obviously be able to practice speaking the language more with people, if you're comfortable, speaking to people in general in public, but also you'll unlock more input and you'll unlock more compelling and engaging input. If you go to a bar and you see two people here speaking the language that you want to learn, if you're comfortable speaking to them in your target language, then there's a high chance they'll probably respond to you in the target language. And in that situation, you basically unlock free, engaging, and compelling interactive input. Usually input that you get in public talking to people is just of a higher quality than you'll get watching a video because it's more interactive, it's more engaging. And because of the fact that it's a social encounter, your brain is just more turned on. You want to appear sociable, you want them to like you maybe. So your brain is really, focusing more than it might on a YouTube video because, it's real life. And being sociable can just unlock more and more input. Imagine you're at a college campus and there's exchange students who speak the language you're trying to learn. You could befriend those students if you're sociable enough, if you're comfortable doing that, and you could, unlock a really good person to practice your target language with. Because of course, if you're talking to an exchange student, you might be able to crosstalk, you might be able to speak English while they speak whatever language you're trying to learn, let's just say Spanish. And with that, you've unlocked somebody who isn't just a good conversation partner, but understands the plight of someone who's learning a foreign language. So they're probably gonna be really good. They'll be really good at explaining what they're trying to say. They'll be good at breaking things down. You're in the same boat. And you can basically just unlock more and more input and more opportunities to use the language if you're an extrovert, if you're sociable. And it's not really just about input and output. It's also just about motivation. Because I think that every time you meet somebody who speaks a different language, that's just one more piece of motivation for you to get better and better and better, to talk to that person. Every new friend you make is a new reason you want to learn the language. So it almost becomes this positive feedback loop where you're making connections, and those connections make you want to learn the language more. And this has happened to me mostly with people online. Well, I'll meet people online and we'll end up, becoming conversation partners. And the more conversation partners you have, the more you want to practice the language. The more practicing the language becomes more part of your daily schedule. So I do think that extroversion and sociability is just such a key aspect of language learning due to the inherent social nature of language learning. For instance, if you're extrovert, you might even want to go to the country of the language you're learning, which of course is like a great goal to have because it's something to look forward to and something to keep you on track. And it's not easy to want to go to a foreign country. It's hard. Sometimes it's dangerous, not like super dangerous, but gets you out of your comfort zone and to a serious degree. So, these things are all things that you are more likely to be into if you're more of an extroverted social person. The next skill I want to talk about is just being a confident person. I think confidence is so key, probably to so many things, but specifically to language learning. The truth is, every single person can learn a language, but if you don't think you can learn a language, you can't. There's a mental block. When I was starting at language learning, the thought I had in my head was, if that person can do it and that person can do it, why can't I do it, right? If it seems to work for these people, what do they have that I don't have? I should be able to do it. And even though it wasn't working, like even though in the beginning it didn't feel like it was 100% working, and it took me a little bit of time to feel like I was getting it, I had confidence in myself because I was like, well, they seem to do it with this method, why can't I, right? But if you're not a confident person, you might not think of it that way. You might see other people learning a language with comprehensible input, and you might say, well, they're just really smart. I'm just not that smart. Maybe they can do it, maybe I can't do it. And already you're kind of just questioning yourself. And that bleeds into when you're actually doing comprehensible input and you're listening to content, you're sitting there in your head and you're like, this isn't working. I don't feel this. I don't know if this is working. Maybe I should stop. And all those negative thoughts just completely block you from being able to engage with the content. And it's not that people who are more confident are smarter, it's just that they trust the process long enough to get the results. People who aren't confident tend to quit before they actually get to the point where it feels like it's working. And to demonstrate this, I'm gonna tell you a story about two guys. We'll call them John and James. John and James, they both wanted to learn a language. So John said, I'm gonna do an hour a day. And for the first 50 days, he wasn't really sure if it was working. An hour a day of doing super beginner content. He's not really sure if he's picking it up. But as time goes on, he's like, okay, maybe a little bit more. And then by day 50, he's like, you know what? I can see that I've made some progress from when I started. And then he makes, an hour a day for another 50 days. And by day 100, he's like, okay, now I really can see my progress. And all of a sudden, he's at day 150 and he can understand intermediate content and he's doing great. Now we have James. And James, for the first 10 days, does an hour a day and says, this is not working. I don't see how this is working. Maybe other people are just better at this than I am. Maybe I can't do this. So then for the next 10 days, he's like, I'm gonna do 30 minutes a day. Maybe I'll get something, but maybe I won't, right? So then he does 30 minutes a day and he still isn't getting it. He's like, this doesn't feel like it's working. And by day 50, he completely stops. He completely stops trying to learn the language. Later, 150 days after they both start language learning, they go out to lunch and James sees how good John's, let's say, Spanish is. And James says, wow, John's Spanish is so good. He must just be really good at learning languages. But that's not what happened. What really happened is that James just never got through that period of time where things were uncertain, and John did. John just had the confidence to continue putting in the work, whereas James quit because he didn't have the confidence. So again, it's not about who's more intelligent, it's just that who believes in themselves more, who gave it more time. And this is what I see all the time with people who stop language learning. It's they quit early and they say, oh, I just didn't work for me. It's like, yes, everybody feels that way. Everybody feels like it's not working for them in the beginning, and then eventually it does. And if you quit before you get to the point where it becomes obvious it's working, you're just gonna feel like everybody's so much smarter than you, but that's the entirely wrong conclusion. Hey guys, short intermission to tell you about Lengualytics. That's my website where you can find comprehensible input and track your progress watching it. You can see what other users are watching and get statistics about how well your journey is going. If you're interested, sign up for free using the link in the description. I'm always adding cool new features and everyone who uses it loves it. But even if you hate it, you can always just stop using it. You won't hurt my feelings. Link in the description. In the beginning, I said there's one skill that I think is more important than almost any other skill, and nobody really talks about it, and that is the ability to feel comfortable in ambiguity. Learning a language is not a conscious process of memorization. It's not like learning state capitals. It's not like learning your times tables. So when you listen to someone presenting comprehensible input, if you're stuck there and you're like, I have to understand every word, every grammar rule, and you have no capacity for ambiguity, if you just need to know every single thing, if you're somebody who in high school was a note taker, you needed to get every single thing down, language learning is going to be really tough for you. Because that is just not how we experience language. Even in our native languages, when we're listening to somebody talk, there's sometimes we're not 100% sure what they're completely saying, but we get it, right? And that's 100% what you're gonna feel when you're listening to a foreign language. You don't need every nuance of every word to really understand what a person's saying. There's a lot that you can leave to context, that you can leave to gesturing, that you can leave to just expressions and in people pointing to images. There's a lot of things that you really don't need to 100% understand to get the main message. And if you're sitting there focusing on every single little detail, you're treating language learning more of a process of conscious memorization than a process of subconscious pattern recognition. And what that's gonna do is make it so when you get to native content, higher level content, you're gonna be translating in your head because that's the only way you know how to get every single little detail. And eventually, the content's gonna become too native, too fast, and you're gonna be sitting there like, well, this isn't working anymore. I used to be able to understand a sentence by translating it into English and then understanding that meaning. I've never learned how to just listen to the language and directly get the meaning. So this all comes back to translating in your head. Translating in your head, although it works when people are talking very, very slow and your mind actually can process the language, translate it into English, and then get the meaning, that stops working. Especially, in native conversations, and even in, intermediate audiobooks, it'll stop working because it's just too fast. And your mind just isn't meant to be decoding on the fly like that. And that's not how we speak our native languages. When you're listening to me speak, you're not thinking about my grammar, you're not thinking about my words, you're not mixing them all up in your head and trying to figure out the exact, what tense are we in? You're not thinking about the structure of what I'm saying, you're just getting the meaning. Because the sounds that I'm making directly mean something to you in your head. Without any intermediate step, the sounds I'm making just make meaning appear in your head. And that's how we talk as well. We don't talk by saying, okay, I'm in past tense, so therefore I need to add this, these two letters at the end of this word. We don't do that. We just speak and understand naturally. If you're not comfortable with ambiguity, you'll have a very, very hard time, if not it being impossible, to get to a point where you can speak your target language just like you do your native language. For me, someone who's consumed tons of comprehensible input, I still have to rely on context, and I don't fully get every word when I'm listening to Harry Potter, for instance. There are things I have to, interpret through context, and not everything is perfectly intelligible to me at all times. And I noticed when I go check out content to put on Lengualytics from other languages like German or Italian or Portuguese that I don't speak, I noticed that when I'm watching the videos, I'm really good at getting the main message now, even if I don't understand every word, because my brain is just used to being in comprehensible input mode, where it's like, yeah, you don't need to know, the exact things people are saying. You can generally get the message. To me, that's a really interesting sign of how our brains start to adapt when they're thrown a lot of things that aren't perfectly clear. I've seen the types of people who I'd call note takers really struggle to learn a new language because they're just way too caught up in the details and they're not catching what's really important when they're trying to consume content in the language they're trying to learn. Now, I know there's probably a lot of other soft skills I didn't talk about in this video. If I missed any, put them in the comments below. We'll talk about them later. If you're looking for comprehensible input or you're looking to track your progress, please check out my my language learning site called Lengualytics, where you can find comprehensible input content and easily track your progress. It's the perfect site for anybody who is learning a language through comprehensible input, built 100% for comprehensible input learners. And I'll see you in the next video. I hope you didn't notice how horribly sick I am today. Or this last week, I've been pretty sick. Anyway,